Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. We are starting our weekend right with watches, and everything you see here, at least as of today, is in stock and for sale. Reach out to me for pricing. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for your questions about any of these watches. We buy what we sell what we buy. We love to add inventory, so if you want to sell us a watch or trade us a watch, reach out to me. Same friendly service. We make the process easy. We walk you through. We wire cash. We pay fast. No upper limit on value paid. We will buy your entire collection. To buy, trade, or sell, reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. Back in 2015, Omega answered the prayers of the faithful and brought back the long-dormant Pi-Pan dial constellation. Now, a couple of DeVille Pi-Pan dials had been created in the period that intervened between the 1950s and the modern era, but this, the Constellation Globemaster, was a regular production revival of the watch that many Western watch collectors consider to be the definitive constellation. The Griffin Claw is very popular in Asia, but the Pi-Pan was much awaited, and the watch is spectacular. Technically part of the Constellation collection, it has a quasi-tonneau case that's about 46.3 millimeters lug to lug and so very agreeably sized. The watch is only 39 millimeters in diameter, and it's got a lovely subtle two-tone between the tungsten carbide of the bezel and the steel of the case. Now on the dial you have those Pi-Pan-like facets, all applied indices, all applied logo and marquee. The watch is sporty, while not a strict sports watch. It is 100 meters water resistant, which means on a different strap, yeah, you can take it swimming. We have a couple of subsidiary setting modes, one being the time zone function that allows you to move the hour hand independent of the other two without stopping them, and you can adjust the date forward and backwards depending on whether you're crossing the international date line. Hacking seconds, better believe it. On the reverse side, reminding us that the original 1952 Constellation was an observatory chronometer, so we have the image of the observatory and the stars at center. Caliber 8900, twin barrels, 60-hour power reserve, chronometer, shock-resistant, anti-magnetic, coaxial escapement, as envisioned by George Daniels and realized by Omega in series production. It is a properly sized movement for this case. They go hand in glove, and you can see, although it's machine finished, it's handsomely so, with spiral arabesque Côte de Genève across the bridges and rotor, blackened and polished screws, and you can see underneath there's a little bit of engine turning on the lower bridges and the base plate. So good-looking watch altogether. It comes with a full clasp, alligator in dark blue. We'll throw it on my wrist of 16 centimeters in circumference, get a real sense of this watch. I always thought that this is the best kept secret in the Omega catalog. The timepieces are lovely. They fit beautifully. They're flat, they're short across the wrist. They're for him, they're for her, and I believe that there's room in this world for two different constellations, the Griffin Claw and the Pi-Pan. But if I had to push, buy one and commit, it would be this. A really cool piece. Okay, so from an entirely different school of thought, back in 2009, Richard Mille decided to create a simplified and smaller version of the RM25 diving tourbillon. And so this, the RM28, was born as the pared back iteration. It's not for a shy man. At 47 millimeters in rose gold with titanium hardware, it is quite simply massive. 56 millimeters from lug to lug, but here's where size is deceptive, because although this thing is an absolute boat anchor, maybe that's a ship anchor because it's really big, you can see how the curvature of the case back arcs seamlessly into the strap from the underside, so this straddles your wrist and actually wears reasonably for a thing that weighs a metric ton. I'm going to throw it on my wrist now, demonstrate to you real quick. I should probably have pulled out this strap beforehand. But it is a remarkably easy thing to wear for its size. My wrist is 16 centimeters circumference, so normally I would say 56 millimeters lug to lug. No, don't do it. This thing isn't supposed to look proportional. You could see from down the barrel how the lugs really don't arc over the edge of my wrist. And because of the way the case back and the strap is curved, it sits secure. It is an ostentatious and outrageous Miami, LA, Italian Riviera type of watch. It's the watch you post on Instagram, but ergonomically, it also makes a lot of sense. So if your wrist is my size or larger, game on. Now, most RM watches, much to the dismay of the people who pay for the privilege, they're not that water resistant, typically between 30 and 50 meters with push-down crowns. I don't even recommend swimming in them. So the nice thing about this model is that it's an honest-to-God dive watch with 300-meter water resistance and a screw-down crown. You can also see that we have two sapphires. So there's one that's over the dial and then another on which the indices as well as the stenciled and filled Arabic numerals sit. So what do I mean by filled Arabic numerals? Well, I mean they're filled with luminescent material. All three hands loomed, plus the indices, plus the outboard indices, plus the quad Arabic numerals. All right, let's see what else we've got here. We have RMAS 7 caliber, Vache based, but highly customized for RM, fully constructed of grade 5 titanium, satinated, blackened, 55-hour power reserve, hacking, quickset, with a variable winding efficiency rotor. So by moving these wings, your RM watchmaker can determine the winding activity of the watch. Very active for those who have desk jobs, less active for those who are very vigorous and might wear down the system. So you have that tailorability. It's built for shock, first because you can see it features a free-sprung balance, and then second because where the movement joins the case internally, there are little rubber donuts between the feet of the movement and the flanks of the case. So a really cool piece, one that's definitely going to be controversial, simply because any RM is controversial, and this is not any RM. This is one of the biggest. It's got a 60-click bezel with outstanding feel, and you can only operate it by pushing these two trigger releases, so that's how that works. You can also see that the bezel is uncommonly dished, sloping down. A really cool piece, but only for a guy who's got the panache to pull it off. Maybe I spoke too soon, because this is what follows. So today we're discussing something that's off the books. In 2020, Rolex made the Oyster Flex strap bracelet available on the Sky-Dweller. And from 2021, Rolex offered this monster right here, which is the 326-259, and it's called the TBR. So this is not a conventional Sky-Dweller. This is a watch that is entirely diamond paved, right down to the buckle. It is all factory. None of this is 47th Street fare. Rolex did this in Geneva, and these are the last truly handmade Rolex watches, because at Rolex, gem setting is still done by hand with tools, loops, and flames. And that's how this is accomplished. But you could see that because it is Rolex, they've got only the best gem setters. These rows are perfectly aligned, and the only part of the process that is automated is the optical scanning of the gems to ensure that they are of identical color and clarity so that there's no gradient across the surface. This is a white gold Sky-Dweller, so of course the 326-259, the 9 meaning white gold, and then TBR meaning there's a hell of a lot of diamonds. Take a quick look at the case flank and how perfectly these lugs and case bands are paved. Everything is micrometrically precise, but still executed by hand. You can also see that the outer face of the ring command bezel has a pyramid-style normal, I would say, knurling pattern. It's a normal pyramid. It's polished. It's almost like diamond plate, and it's exclusive to this model. We also have a dial that consists of meteorite, and I mean entirely of meteorite. So it's a piece of iron, meteorite, that is cut, oxidized, stabilized to preserve the Wittmann-Statten patterns, and then you get what you see here. So no two of these watches are going to be exactly alike. We also have diamond indices, and we have an annual calendar system, which I will demonstrate now. So here's the cool thing about these watches. This is part of a family of super elite Rolex watches that's only available by special request. They're not cataloged, they're not kept in inventory, they're not advertised on the website. You have to know about them to get them, and that's before you pay the price. So taking a quick look at how the annual calendar system works, we still have the ring command bezel. So I screw out the crown. I can wind the watch in the first position. By the way, 100 meters water resistant, 70-hour power reserve, chronometer certified, anti-magnetic, and shock resistant all at once. Now the crown doesn't do anything in the outer position. If I twist the bezel one click counterclockwise, you can see I'm able to adjust the annual calendar forward and backwards. 12 hours corresponding to 12 months. We have a little aperture and then a red index that jumps around inside those apertures. So for example, right here, you're looking at the 6th month, the 1st, so that is June 1st. So that's how that works. This is a brilliant bidirectional annual calendar system, and it requires only one setting per year during the jump from February to March. One more click, now I can drive that local hour hand, and I can turn the date forward but not backwards. Note, the watch is still ticking, minute hand, not moving. One more click, now I've activated hacking seconds and stop seconds. Take a quick look here because you can see the stop seconds coincides with the motion of every indicator on the dial, starting with the 24-hour second time zone, but also including the two hands at center. And then, of course, push the crown back in, just like that. We're good to go. Lots to love with this model. 42 millimeters, so it's big, but it's 13.9 millimeters thick, which might be less than you expect, and about 50.4 millimeters from lug to lug. I'm going to throw it on my wrist. This one's on the Oyster Flex strap bracelet, so named because, well, it is like an oyster bracelet, but it flexes, and it's actually metal all the way through. It's a band of nickel titanium alloy. That's why it's called a bracelet. You cannot cut it. The watch wears well on my wrist, though make no mistake, you're going to have some questions. You better have answers. Everyone asks questions about this watch. Anything you can imagine, but when you're wearing this watch, it's like driving a Ferrari. People take notice. The timepiece is massive, but it's not excessively thick, nor is it excessively broad lug to lug, as I can pull it off pretty easily. I'd say 15 centimeters circumference and larger. You're going to wear this really well. There is some lume, albeit not a lot. Hands only. But one feature that I enjoy, because obviously with a full metal band in the strap, you can't cut it. You get a version of the glide lock that's conventionally featured on only Rolex dive watches. Well, here you get 12 millimeters of adjustability in 2 millimeter increments. So you have quite a bit of sizing flexibility that can be operated without any kind of a tool. So this is a really cool, well thought out, super rare, ultra exclusive, best kept secret in the Rolex catalog. Chopard is often given a lot of credit by watch snobs, but very little credit by the market as a whole. People who know about them love them. People who don't know about them will probably never find out. Of course, Chopard since 1996 has been a true manufacturer, starting out with some help from Michel Parmigiani. Today they do it all in-house. And for 2016, the company celebrated its 20th anniversary as a manufacturer, and it created the Perpetual Twin. Well, this is a 2020 upgrade to the Perpetual Twin in stainless steel, making it more of an everyday watch. It's 43 millimeters in diameter in steel. You can see the case is nicely detailed with narrow lugs integrated into the case band and vertical satination. We have a blue metallic dial, and though it is a dress watch, it's fairly well loomed. At least the two hands are well loomed. And then it's a perpetual calendar with a twin date. It is also a certified COSC chronometer. Flip it over, the movement's impressive. You can see caliber 9622L, micro rotor automatic, twin stacked mainspring barrels, 65-hour power reserve. And you can see as I twist it through the light here, very impressively decorated and handsomely executed with a lovely 22-karat white gold micro rotor that allows you to see the entirety of the movement, unlike a center rotor, and keeps the watch as thin as a manual wind, because the rotor and its winding system are in the same plane as the other bridges. My favorite detail here, the snailing on the platform underneath the rotor. That looks really nice. Of course, you can see that the watch sets beautifully. There's almost no dead angle in this crown. Just the slightest bit of displacement starts the hands up, which I really like. The watch is big at 43, but it's not thick. As you can see on my wrist of 16 centimeters, it wears nicely. It's going to take up all the real estate. I don't recommend it on a wrist smaller than mine, but I do recommend it on a wrist my size or larger. And you can see it'll easily fit underneath the cuff. It's on a lovely strap that's gator on both sides, rectangular on the top, small round scale on the bottom, something we're seeing more and more on super premium watches from the likes of Vacheron, and Chopard now as well. A really nice piece. If you want an everyday friendly perpetual calendar, you can do no better than stainless steel. All right, I like watches that are weird and watches that are off the beaten path. In 2009, Jaquet launched this, the 12 Cities. In 2013, it launched the version you see here, which is the 12 Cities aventurine. So you have white mother of pearl, you have the remainder of the dial in aventurine glass. It is a jump hour with a 12 city system, and I'll show you how this works. So you set your city of reference, and the cities are 12 large market watch buying cities. So you better live in one of them if you want a perfect match here. But we've got a jump hour system with one hand at center, and then we've got this jumping system that's activated manually so that you can set the time and the city to correspond and hopefully make some changes that will represent the place where you are. If you're in a quirky time zone or your location does not match one of these cities, you might be out of luck. That said, most watch buyers I know from looking at the traffic on my YouTube channels, they are from these localities. It's nicely sized in steel, a rarity for Jaquet, 39 millimeters and really easy to wear. Flip it all over. We've got a movement that is based on the Frédéric Piguet 1150. So you can see it's the 3663. It's based on the 1150, but with a higher beat rate of 4 hertz rather than 3. So this twin barrel movement has a 68-hour power reserve, 5-position adjustment, very nicely decorated. The bevels in particular are a standout, though don't sell the Côte de Genève short nor the solarization on the barrels. It's a good-looking movement with black polished screws, satinated wheels, engine turning on the base plate, and that lovely cut white gold rotor. Begin 39 millimeters. This is a good unisex watch option. By the way, note the bonded strap, no stitching. I throw it on my wrist, and it wears quite comfortably. It's far inboard the edges of my wrist, and you can really see that from this angle. Even from over the top, the lugs aren't out at the edge, and this always exaggerates the size of a watch, plus I'm pulling it tight. It's flat, and it has a relatively sloped case flank, so yes, cuffs are welcome. A really cool piece backed by the Swatch Group. Jaquet, Droz, Harry Winston, Breguet, Blancpain. That is the peak of the luxury pyramid in the Swatch Group, and this is right up there, but it's one of the lowest production of the group. I think a little bit less than 3,000 watches a year from Jaquet, Droz. So, from Jaquet Droz to the polar opposite, this is the Panerai PAM 999 Radiomir GMT 3 days Verde Militare and the PAM 999, part of a series of 4 green dial Panerai watches that debuted in 2019. It has a power reserve, it has 100-meter water resistance, it has a second time zone, and watch the seconds hand. 0 reset seconds. So when you hack the movement, you don't just stop the seconds hand, you 0 reset it to make it easier to set the watch against a reference time. Now you have a little AM PM indicator that's coaxial with the seconds display, so you know whether the second time zone is depicting 9 AM or 9 PM. And the watch has a 3-day power reserve courtesy of 2 stacked barrels, an uncommon arrangement for Panerai. You can also see the bubble-like sapphire, and it is a sapphire, not a plexi, designed to give you a vintage impression. Sandwich-style dial, a stencil on top of a solid disc of lume, and no shortage of luminescence, including in the sub-registers, which is a nice flourish of design as well as practical. On the reverse side, you see caliber P4002, which I believe debuted in late 2014, a micro rotor automatic. It's a little bit like what we saw on the Chopard in that it keeps the watch thin and the case bag visible. So 72-hour power reserve, braced against shock by a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance. And of course, it's got some machine finished elements, but handsome ones like satination on the bridges and plates, a machined bevel, polished screw heads, and some engine turning on the base plate. A really good looking watch, 47 millimeters in diameter and quite large across the wrist. But I'm going to encourage you to consider the watch, even if your wrist is my size, because I can tell you, sitting here with it on my wrist, it looks and it feels like it fits. It's going to be right at the limit, but the thing about these Radiomir 1940 cases and the wire lugs before them is that they sit more or less square. So you don't get the impression of the lugs splaying out over the end of your wrist. You just feel the cushion profile of the case, which is 47 by 47. So essentially, again, square. It doesn't protrude over the edge of the wrist. Only the lugs do. As long as the case is contained within the surface area of your wrist, I think you're going to wear this watch well and really enjoy it. And again, 100 meters water resistant. Put it on a different strap. This one's swimmable. Waco, founder of Rake and Revolution magazines, has recently launched a new company called Grail Watch. And while affiliated with Rake and Revolution, technically it's a separate entity, providing an outlet for his tastes in watches as he collaborates with independents, small manufacturers, and likewise big group brands across the industry. He has no dogmas. He will work with any creator. He's worked with companies as big as Franck Muller and as small as, well, Laurent Ferrier. Taking a quick look here, this is the classic origin launched by the Grail Watch company, and actually this one's Rake and Revolution, pardon. Rake and Revolution and Grail Watch are separate. We'll talk about Grail Watch another time. This is Rake and Revolution number 10 of 12, and it is the classic origin with a champagne dial and then stainless steel case of 40 millimeters, unsigned crown with an onion profile. That's a vintage element. Waco has long been a fan of mid-century dress watches, so what he did was he created the look of a first-half 20th century Calatrava, Breguet Arabic numerals, sectors, railroad tracks. Now, the numerals themselves, as well as the hands, are actually ruthenium-darkened white gold. We have a stepped small seconds, and then you flip it all over. There you see Revolution and the Rake on the back there. and we have caliber 11601. It's a little bit more pared down compared to something like the FBN 229, the micro rotor auto, but it's got a longer power reserve at 80 hours. You can see there's a spectacular rounded and black polished click spring that doubles as the click itself, an element drawn from vintage pocket watches. Another element drawn from vintage Geneva pocket watches, the use of frosting on bridges and plates rather than Côte de Genève or perlage. Those are styles that came into fashion later. This is more elemental, true to history. The bevels, as you can see, are incredibly broad and lustrous. This is really what you're paying for when you buy a Laurent Ferrier. Beveling also executed in the jewel sinks. You can see that there is a balance beaten away at 3 Hertz, adjusted in 6 positions, one more than a standard chronometer, and free sprung with an overcoil hairspring. So again, pared down compared to something like the 229, but still exquisite in its detailing. Being a steel watch at 40 millimeters, it's really easy to wear. It's got a strap that is calfskin on the top, and then Alcantara, a super premium motorsports-oriented synthetic suede on the bottom, to remind you that Laurent Ferrier, the man, was once an avid race car driver. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. And by the way, if you want to see more about the Grail watches proper, check out Watchbox Reviews, search Grail Watch, and you'll get those Waco models. But the Rake and Revo Classic Origin looks fantastic, and it's fairly short from lug to lug, or at least acceptably short, such that I could recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference. It really looks and feels great. An awesome piece. This is, in my opinion, what people should be chasing instead of the likes of blue chronometers and ballyhooed watches named 28 and Simplicity. I think those are great. But for $1 million, I don't think Simplicity delivers. Whereas for under 50 grand for this, I think you get all that and more. Is it Philippe Dufour? No, but it's 80%. And you tell me, what percentage of 1 million is 50,000? Check it out. All right. Now, another underrated brand, I would say of the traditional Holy Trinity, Vacheron is the most overlooked by watch enthusiasts, which is unfortunate because it has a history at least as rich as the others, being far older. Remember, Audemars Piguet was created in 1875, Patek Philippe, or at least its original iteration, 1839, and then Vacheron in 1755. So this is the Corne de Vache. It's based on a 1955 reference, the 6087 cow horn lugged chronograph. Now, only 36 of those were made across 3 different metals. The revival of the Corne de Vache came in 2015 as a platinum watch. Here we have the stainless steel version that bowed in 2019. So 38.5 millimeters, just a little bit bigger than the original, but not much. Beautifully decorated with a vintage look. We've got the stepped bezel. We have the Corne de Vache lugs. We have a cylindrical case. We have pump-style pushers, Maltese cross on the crown. On the dial, another element drawn from history, the tachymeter on the dial rather than a bezel. And we will fire this watch up so you can get a sense of it. Lateral clutch with column wheel. Manual wind, Lamagna 2320 base, so very high-end chronograph, overcoil, 5-position adjustment, free sprung, lateral clutch with a column wheel that includes the Maltese cross at its center. And you can see the quality of the decoration on both the steel parts of the chronograph as well as the brass parts of the bridges and plates. Beveling is exemplary, and in fact, from this angle, you can see that it's been lavished on both bridges and steel chronograph components. The chronograph components have satination across their top. The bridges feature Côte de Genève, and if you take a close look, you could see, probably not at this magnification, that all of the screws feature chamfered circumference and slotted centers, which is always impressive. Geneva hallmark, you better believe it. It's caliber 1142. And the watch to which it is attached, both Geneva hallmark. Throw it on the wrist. This watch is bigger than the historic original, but it is not big. At 38.5 millimeters, this is a watch for guys, this is a watch for gals, for anyone who wants a really fine watch. Part of the Vacheron Historique collection, this watch is a throwback without being a retro timepiece. It's designed to be very wearable in its size, durable in its steel, and refined and finished to a degree that, frankly, even Geneva hallmark Vacheron watches of the 50s often were not. This is a modern watch that's proud of its heritage. That's the best way to describe it. If you love what you see here, by the way, how much do you like that vignette fade leather strap? Reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.